King, written by Hans Christian Andersen. This is very interesting story which is fantasy based. This story begins like this. There once lived an evil and arrogant king whose ambition was to conquer all the countries of the world. He wanted to make every person fear his name, so he attacked the world with sword and fire. His soldiers trampled the grain and set fire to the farms. The apple trees in the gardens were burned. They stood black and leafless, and their fruits hung roasted on the branches. The soldiers were more evil than the spirits in the hell. They watched as mothers wept, clung to their babies, and hid behind the broken, soot-smeared walls which were once their homes. But the king was pleased. Everything was going just as he wanted it to. Day by day, he became more powerful, and his name struck fear in all hearts. The loot from conquered towns, the gold and the treasures made him the richest person in the world. He built beautiful palaces and arcades. Everyone who saw them said, "We have a great king." No one thought of the suffering he had caused them. No one heard the sighs and cries of lament that came from the towns he had destroyed. Every day the king looked at his golden treasures and at his palaces and said to himself, "What a great king I am!" But he thought he must have even more. "No other power must be equal to me," he declared. And so he attacked his neighbors and conquered them all. And he treated them in the most cruel way. Soon the king had his statues placed in all the squares of the cities and in the royal castles. He wanted them placed on altars in the churches as well. But at this point the priest refused him, saying, "You are the great, we know, but God is greater." Then said the evil king, "I must conquer God." And so he had an artificial ship built. The ship could lift itself into the air and fly. It was brightly colored like a peacock's tail and had 1,000 eyes. Every eye was actually the muzzle of a gun. If the king pressed a button, 1,000 bullets would fly and the emptied gun would reload themselves. 100 strong eagles were tied to the ship and flew with it. When the ship was ready, the king sat in it grandly and flew towards the sun. Soon he could see the earth from above, covered with forests and mountains. It looked like a plowed field, and as he flew higher, the earth became a flat map, and soon it was hidden by clouds and mist. The eagles flew higher and higher with the ship. Then God sent down one of his angels. The evil king fired 1,000 bullets at him, like hailstones hitting the earth. The bullets sprang in all directions and hit the angel's shining wings. As he was one, just one drop of blood dripped from the white feathers of the angel's wings and fell on the evil king's ship. The drop was as heavy as 1,000 hundredweights of lead, and the ship plunged down so fast that the strong wings of the eagles were broken. The wind rushed past the king's head. The great clouds formed by the smoke from the burning cities he had destroyed turned into fearful shapes. One was like a gigantic crab reaching its own great pincers towards him, and another looked like a dragon. When at last the king's ship came to rest on the tops of some trees, he lay in the wreckage and it seemed that he would die. But he didn't. "I will conquer God," he said. He screamed. "I have sworn to do it, and I shall." For 7 years he set all his workmen to build ships that could fly through the air. He ordered his blacksmith to make thunderbolts of the strongest steel, which he would use to destroy the fortress of God's heaven. Then from all the countries he ruled, he gathered huge armies. When he stood in formation, shoulder to shoulder, they covered vast areas of land. The armies climbed into the marvelously constructed airships. The king himself was about to board the ship when God let loose a swarm of mosquitoes on him. They flew like a thick dark cloud round the king and stung his face and hands. In a fury, he drew his sword and slashed the air, but not one of them was harmed. The king now ordered thick blankets to be brought and wrapped around him so that no mosquitoes could touch his skin. The people did as he commanded, but no one saw that a little mosquito had hidden itself in the innermost blanket. It crept into the king's ear and pierced his skin. The sting blurred like fire, and soon its poison flowed through his body and entered the brain. In a wild rage, the king threw off the blankets and tore his clothes. He began to dance in pain before his soldiers, while they laughed and pointed cruelly at the mad king who had set out to conquer God and was bitten by a tiny mosquito. Thank you. This was all about the evil king. Hope you like this video.